I've decided to post this video up. I've debated whether starting a channel or not. I'm still unsure of whether that would be my intent. Perhaps I'm just simply posting this up to have a way to vent my frustrations. It'll be more cathartic for me than anything else. But from watching the things that are going on in our country, I obviously, for those who can't tell, I'm an American. I'm not happy with the direction that it's going. With the recent shootings going on around the country with the ICE, that the debates going on, the justification of saying the one with Renee Good, from a legal standpoint, it can be tricky of how they'll decide that, but from a moral standpoint, I do not believe it was justified. I've stated before on this platform that as someone who served in the military and the restrictions we had for ROE, and we would have been charged with a war crime for some of the things that police get away with in this country, and I am completely baffled of how they have looser restrictions and their immunity they get for the things they do, that had we done any of these things they did overseas, we would have been charged with war crimes. I believe that police misconduct has been on a rise. They have a lack of training, and it's just clear a lack of morality. It seems like they rely more on their qualified immunity, that they're going to get out of trouble. I think that they do need proper training. They should have third parties oversee their cases of misconduct. I am concerned with that they are able to investigate themselves for misconduct, and of course they never find any, because why would one find themselves guilty of anything? And that's not to say all police are bad. I think there are police that are good out there, but there are those who are simply brainwashed. They don't know. They're just going off of what they've been told, which is already anyone's beliefs are, is brainwashing. Things are told, things they tell themselves. As studies have shown, you can literally change your personality by saying these affirmations to yourself, whether or not you believe in the other things people go on with affirmations about being able to manifest things and whatever. I can understand you not liking, but the fact that one can tell themselves they're a loser, they'll feel like a loser, they'll behave like a loser. They tell themselves they're a winner, they'll behave like winners, they'll feel like winners. That is real. That's something I suffered with a lot through my life, through a lot of abuse. I've suffered from complex PTSD since I was a child that I won't really get into at this moment. It has nothing to do with the issue that I'm discussing. Even all the problems I've had in my life, I understand that there are those who still have had a worse life, so I'm not really trying to complain. Though I have been practicing Stoicism, as I find that as helpful. Of course, I've been starting with the classic of like Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, Seneca, Epictetus, I think I pronounced that correctly, or those, or modern ones like Massimo, I'm going to probably screw this up, Pigucci, and Donald Robertson, William Irving, and John Sellers. As I will read their books after I finish the classic works for a more modern version on it and work on my own. I think it'd be good for everyone to go through these, but again, it's not really for me to decide whether it's right or wrong. I think that directly go against Stoicism to try and say people should do it. I have recently moved to Nampa, Idaho, where I was myself a victim of police misconduct from some overzealous kids who seemed like it was their first day on the job because they were all rookies. None of them seemed to know what they were doing. I had to actively correct things they were doing, and they had even used excessive force on myself. Again, not to complain as it has happened to others, and my case was not as severe as others, so though that doesn't make it right for them to do so. And their police department does not have a very good reputation as it is. So my only hope from that is that they at least will be punished in some way other than a simple slap on the wrist. I've been struggling with my PTSD. Been waiting for the VA to get me appointments to go do therapy, as my thoughts are very much still lingering around revenge, as my training in the military makes me have that brainwashing of my own to having to deal with, to fight against. As I must say, when I was a child, this is not the life I ever intended of having any violence. I wanted to be a poet. I digress on things, but I do believe that, took some notes here so I don't get lost. Oddly enough, that the police should all have to take the Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory, which is just a really fancy psych eval, basically. It happens to be done in Minnesota, but it will test mainly for things like the dark triad, which I don't think anyone who tests high on that should be a police officer. I think they should all be required to do this, to test for any of that, and if they test high on it, should be denied their ability to be a law enforcement officer of any kind, and that all their test scores should be put up on the website for the citizens to be able to review and know who their employees are, because that's really what they are. They are employees. Salaries are paid for with tax dollars, and most companies will run this test to see people they're hiring before they hire them, to evaluate them. So I don't see why it should be any different, especially for those who are given a badge and a gun and given this authority to I don't want to say rule over us, but that's the mindset they seem to have, that they don't think they're public servants. They believe they are there to rule over us and decide, what's right and wrong. It seems they're more set on trying to find ways to make people criminals than to keep the peace. And even the Nampa Police Department, they have themselves as their mission statement on their letters is God bless the peacemakers. So that's not their roles. They're supposed to be keepers of the peace. They're to protect and serve. And definitely violating people's rights is not a way to protect or serve. I do not like all the bickering that seems to be created almost purposely. So if you know much about psyops, you can look into them. There's plenty of things you can find on YouTube that definitely there are some markers that possibly what is purposefully being done. And there are those who would say that's rubbish, but then there are those who work for the government that would not be surprised whatsoever. And if you've looked at history, especially American history, it wouldn't be so surprising. I also believe that the mute button should not be a thing on their body camera, as I'm unsure why that would be. They claim it's for privacy concerns, but that could easily be edited in post. Any personal information said that they don't want heard by other parties. So I think that's a cop-out, no pun intended, that for them to cover things up. I think there should possibly be a lawsuit against, I believe it's Axiom is the company that creates them, that is put in to deliberately allow police to cover things up. For they had the people are able to sue, what was it, one of the gun companies, I don't remember which one it was, for that shooting. So if they could sue the manufacturers of a firearm for a shooting, then I think we should be able to sue the company of the body cam footage for putting the mute button on that have assisted the police in covering up misconduct. And also that, coupled with removing their qualified immunity, I think would definitely help just put the reins on them a bit, where they weren't so eager to rush in, because then they would definitely need to make sure they are within their authority to be able to act in the manner that they do. That's, again, not to say that all police are bad, though there used to be a few bad apples. There seems to be a few good cops, and those that would go against anyone's rights is not a good cop, even if they're illegally allowed to do so. From a moral standpoint, one should not want to do things, find the loopholes, as you can consistently see in their training, to be able to taught of how this is how you get around it. That's where integrity comes in. As one officer who, I will say, that was striking me while I was detained, pinned on the ground, he himself said he was a veteran. I told him he wasn't a real veteran, kind of making fun of him because I was combat arms and he was a comms guy, but also because you take an oath to protect the Constitution. He violated my rights, so that's a violation of the Constitution. And no real veteran would ever violate their oath. And he also took the same oath as a police officer. People are too quick to hate other people in this country because they have a simple different opinion on something. They don't care to try to figure out why they have that different opinion. They just want to tell them they're wrong. Not that I've always been good about that myself, as I am, as maybe just getting older, that finding things to be wrong. Don't really know if I'll do much of this or post anything besides this simple thing, just possibly to be able to reduce my stress, as I'm just kind of stuck in this little camper I've been sitting in. I have nowhere to go because I gotta wait for all my court proceedings to finish up. I don't know if I'll be able to get in school in time, as I don't know if anyone will even watch this or even care, not that they need to, but hopefully somebody will at least find something useful out of there. And those, if anybody was to comment on there, I don't care, so long as it's nothing bad. Be nice. No inappropriate slurs or attacking of anyone. People should learn to have a civil discussion, which I believe is a lost art. So as having patience. People are so immediate gratification. It's what everyone wants. One of the downsides of the internet is people are bored of something, they go to something else. They don't have any sense of patience anymore to wait. They don't like something, they'll just move on to something they do like, so they don't ever have to learn to understand a different way of doing something or different thought. Suppose that's all I'll say for today. If I ever say anything else, I don't know.